Hey there, comic book friends. I'm Travis, and this is another edition of No Capes, where I talk about the comic books that don't have to do with superheroes and/or Ethan doesn't read them or doesn't review them along with me. Here I am. I'm out in front of the old homestead. It is a beautiful spring day. It's midday. The sun is shining so bright right now that we'll see how this goes. Normally, when I'm out here, I do it in the morning when it's not quite so bright. But anyway, we'll see how this goes. Could be a long one. I've got a lot of no capes and one at the very end that I'm going to talk potentially ad nauseum about. So we'll start right off with, of course, the Wonderful Saga. This is issue, or in this case, as they call it, Chapter 11. Beautiful rendered cover there by Fiona Staples. Wonderful artwork on the inside of it. Just an incredible story. I don't care if this book actually ever goes anywhere. I know some people complain about the fact that it doesn't really feel like the book's going anywhere. You know, I don't care. The characters are so compelling just to listen to them talk and whatnot that it's absolutely fabulous. There's kind of like three chunks to this book. The first part of this book has to do with the past and basically the conception of our baby, the main character, one of the main characters in the book. And of course, this is pretty much 100% solidified it for me that I want Elena to be my comic book girlfriend. A sexy Elena in this is absolutely hilarious. And I like her besides just the whole sexy thing. She's just a really cool character. I love the conversation about, you know, should we be having a kid, not having a kid craziness. I love the whole, you know, if, you know, well, I would like to name my son Bar, you know, Bar is in a bar of soap, Bar is in like where you drink from. You know, well, my dad was named Bar, and oh, well, I love it. And then her wishing for a girl with all her might. Another chunk of this is some fatherhood past, some memories of Marco's father, teaching him how basically to ride a cricket, cricket type monster, you know, basically the equivalent of teaching him to ride a bicycle. It's not written in a language that any of us can understand, but we can understand it all the same, just through the way Fiona can portray emotions and stuff as the artist. She does such a fabulous job. And of course, we have our ultimate loss of the father, which has been hinted at, him having a weak heart and him holding the ship together and basically saving them all. Gorgeous all the way through. I mean, for me anyway, I laughed my ass off at the beginning of this thing. The whole sexy Alana thing is just absolutely hilarious. Then lots of other touching moments along the way. It's Hazel, you know, her little bit of narration. This is fabulous. You know, talking about her grandfather, you know, and the piece of the clothing that she still has that she uses as a bookmark now. I think is a beautiful touch. And is just great. The characterization in this book is just absolutely magnificent, and it just feels, despite the setting, despite what's going on, and despite them having horns or wings or that sort of stuff, it just feels so real. And these people's conversations seem so genuine that I absolutely love the book. I just, you know, it's the best thing out there. Next, we're going to talk about another Image book. This is Revival. I absolutely love this cover. Kind of a bummer that really not a whole lot of this cover takes place in this book. We get, you know, talk about the black market for Revival parts and even just things that come from the area. That's interesting and all. It's an interesting little thing. This issue might have been a little on the slower side as far as stuff moving forward and happening. I think we're setting up a bunch more stuff. We get some insight into the sheriff. Obviously, he's holding some dark secret that is being held sway over him in the decisions that he would make by the mayor. The mayor has some sort of weight with him, which is causing some interesting discussions. Dana confronts her sister's professor, who she believes, you know, that the two of them have had a relationship. Basically tells her to stay away from M. That's interesting. I really figured at some point M would come and get him. Speaking of M has met up with a group it's like an AA meeting, except it's people who have revived. They seem to be, or at least the woman who's running it seems to be quite the religious zealot. That could cause some complications and whatnot. I really like the book. I like the simple artwork of Mike Norton is perfect. It conveys all the story and inflections and everything we need. The story itself, I think, is really complex and compelling. Like I said, this issue didn't have a lot of answers. It seems like lots of the issues we get a few answers to go along with a whole bunch of questions. There wasn't a lot in the way of answers in this one, but still, I think a really interesting and creative book. As a side note, I just saw Mike Norton posted on Twitter that today an auction closed on a revival issue number 1 that was CGC'd at a 9.8, and it went for $16,000 or something like that on eBay. Pretty crazy. And this is a book that doesn't have movie tie-ins or potential TV tie-ins or whatnot like that, so why somebody would pay that value, I don't know, other than maybe the print run for it is very small. Not sure exactly on that. Another book I'm really excited to talk about, The Five Ghosts, The Haunting of Fabian Gray. This is number 1 of 5. This was just a lot of fun. Great concept. Character, for some reason, is possessed by these 5 literary ghosts. Basically a Robin Hood, a Sherlock Holmes, a Merlin type character, some sort of samurai, and a vampire Dracula type character. And I love the fact that they just jump right into the story. They don't waste so much time telling us so much of background. The background story of how he got this way and what he's doing about it just kind of gets worked into the folds of the adventure that he's going on, trying to gather information or something along those lines. But I just think it's a great way of telling a story without wasting a bunch of wasting a single issue or 2 issues, trying to give us a bunch of backstory to then go ahead and tell us a story. You don't need that. We're all smart readers. We can figure that out. It's a great book. I love the style of artwork that's in this. I really like the fact that I don't know, there's one part in this where they're like flying over Africa and there's lots of spears and whatnot, and the way the natives look and their spears are drawn and stuff just really kind of reminded me of the really old Johnny Quest cartoon show, the natives that they would show in that. It has that same sort of feel to me, kind of. Not necessarily the show itself, but just the artistic styling of it. And yeah, I'm excited for this book. I think this is going to be just a fun ride, to find out what all happens in it and stuff. It's going to be really cool. It's the number 1 issue, worth picking up, I think, if you can track it down. Okay, another Image comic book that ultimately didn't work, in my opinion, at the very end. Last issue ended really cool with kind of reality, the time kind of either shutting itself down or resetting itself or whatever. We get this issue. The FBI's figured out that that's what was going to happen, and they've sent people back even further, trying to rearrange it. It just felt very... I love the cover. I love the cover of all of these. But it just felt very... too easily tied up at the end, with kind of a clean little bow. And was kind of a letdown. It didn't feel very imaginary, the ending of it. It was very... seemed very stereotypical, which I thought was really unfortunate. It just kind of, pulled the sails out of thing. I almost would have preferred if we wouldn't have had this issue at all. And it would have ended with the last issue with, like I said, them just going, crap, we didn't get to it in time, and the panels dissolving on the page, and as time resets itself and the whole timeline gets, basically shut down and starts over again or whatever. But this kind of all gets cleaned up with a relatively nice, clean little bow at the end of it that, I don't know, just didn't really work a whole lot for me. It's kind of unfortunate. Okay, BPRD, Hell on Earth. This is issue 105. Really interesting issue. I have to say about the BPRD books in general, even a slow one isn't a bad book. It's just a very consistent, very steady, very constant book, and I really enjoy that a lot about the book. This one, we find out that they're The Russians have been running this program in place that's been keeping this spirit locked down since well before the Cold War, and at the end of World War II even. And the broadcast that was running gets damaged and gets shut down as the world's coming to an end. And it's potentially going to cause some serious problems. We get more insight into the Russian character from this and what that means, not having that spirit locked away inside of her little bell jar, this little girl spirit that is very nasty. I say little girl, but she's a very nasty entity. So now we're potentially going to see what happens. What comes of that? Still a really strong book, like I said. Love the the artwork, the feel of this book. It has its own thing, really going really well. Okay, lastly, the last thing I'm going to talk about is it's a superhero comic now, but I'm going to talk about it here. And this is Constantine #1. Now, I said on Twitter I was going to attempt to read this thing with a clear mind, to not really think about Hellblazer and how this book is in comparison to that. So I try to do that as much as I can. Of course, that's somewhat impossible. I got 300 issues of Hellblazer prior knowledge. But let's talk about this as just as a #1 issue, telling a new story about John Constantine. This John Constantine is definitely a lot like the Constantine that is in Justice League Dark. I think to some degree this comic might be reliant on you knowing him from that. Certainly not reliant on you knowing him from his Vertigo title. He's a bastard in this comic. And of course, everybody knows that Constantine's a bastard. He's kind of a bastard in his own comic. But he has a certain amount of... Well, okay, let me start over because I'm already starting to blend the two. In this comic, I'm going to spoil it for you. There's a person in here that comes to him for help. He says, yeah, I can help you, but he's going to use him for a while. And then at the end of the comic, he lets him get killed. And it's not like it's by accident. He actually makes no effort to save this guy. And the guy is literally, crushed to death by magic and splattered all over the inside of a cathedral that's made of ice, because they're in Sweden, which is an interesting part. The whole town made of ice and stuff like that. That was kind of cool, a different cool setting. I feel like they're making him more of an action star. There was more explosions and high power magic and all that kind of craziness went on in this than in any other. Well, there's no way for me to not compare this to Hellblazer book, I guess. It was okay. My problem is he lets this guy die at the end. What is the heroic about this guy? I mean, really, there's nothing to imply that he is doing this for the greater good. The object that he picked up, that this guy helped him find, is part of a compass, and that compass is used to find all the other magical stuff that's all around the world. And at no point does he say he's doing this to protect it from everybody else, or collecting it for Argus to put it in their black room, or anything like that. The implication is that this is just to collect the stuff for himself. So to collect the needle of this compass, he allowed a guy who came to him for help to just be killed. What's the value in this person? What's the value in this character? There has to be something about the character that makes us want to read it. And there's nothing here other than it's kind of amusing, I guess, that he's a jackass. But this is where I'll start talking more about Hellblazer. In Hellblazer, John Constantine was a jackass in that too. He was a manipulator and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, he was always out. Even if he thought he was out for himself, he was also always out for the greater good of everything else. Because obviously, if the world is totally fucked up by something, he can't operate. So when things happen around him, he would take action wherever he could. He might trick people, yes, and he certainly tricked lots of other supernatural creatures and elements along the way, but never to their death unless they were evil things themselves. Character in this was never presented as being an evil person. And lots of people die around Constantine in the Hellblazer book, but it's always by accident, or John did everything he possibly could to attempt to save them. I mean, he clambered down into hell to save a little girl, and ultimately only came back with her arm. It scarred him forever. There's hundreds of comics that deal with him and the effects that had on him and whatnot. This character doesn't seem to have any emotional tether to anything or any values or whatever. The John Constantine from Hellblazer, actually, despite being a drinking, smoking, swearing SOB, was a very noble individual and truly an anti-hero. There's no anti-hero about this character that's been presented in this first issue, and this first issue should have done that. I'm not going to continue collecting this. Probably a mistake to have even picked it up in the first place, because this book is no Garth Ennis Hellblazer. This is what you should be reading. If you thought you were interested in this, you should be reading Garth Ennis's run on Hellblazer. This is no Paul Jenkins run on Hellblazer. This is no Warren Ellis's run on Hellblazer. This is no Brian Arezio's run on Hellblazer. It's no Mike Carey's run on Hellblazer, and it's certainly no Peter Milligan run on Hellblazer. All these Hellblazer books, all those writers wrote a much more compelling, much more rich, much more of an interesting person who had some value, who despite all those bastardy things that he does that seem just rotten and despicable, in the deep down core, a good person, and it's not here. And unfortunately, they use this as the cover. The ad that they were selling this book to start out with is much cooler artwork. But yeah, I mean, you'll probably hear me talk about a few more issues of this book, because like I always say, I pre-order my books, and so I'll pick up a couple issues of this. But unless something really redeems itself in the next issue, I'm not happy with it. I don't know that it was poorly written. I mean, I think it was finely written. It's just this is such a not even a good shadow of the other book, and I think they really expect those of us who are reading Hellblazer to come and read this book. And I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, it's not even fair to call it a PG version of Hellblazer, because he's not Constantine. He's this other guy that they're calling Constantine that just doesn't have the same values. He looks somewhat alike because he wears a trench coat and he smokes, and occasionally has a British accent. Other than that, no, it's not this. They should have just named him something else and created a new character. And if they didn't want to run Hellblazer, canceled Hellblazer and not done this, because this is it's an insult to the Hellblazer title to imply that this is some sort of a replacement, because it's not at all, not even close. It is its own comic. Not poorly written for that, decent enough artwork, but certainly not a replacement for a really good book. So from a standpoint of not knowing anything about the Hellblazer, it's a fine written book and whatnot. I don't know that it appeals to me because, at least with this first issue, there was nothing about this character that would really make me want to continue to be interested in reading about him. I like antiheroes. I love antiheroes. I dig them a lot. In certain ways, certain characteristics about Constantine from the Hellblazer book I can see in myself and whatnot, and some of those I even consider admirable. But none of those are here in this. So maybe he's cool in the fact that he's just a cold bastard, but he's got to have something redeeming about him at some point, doesn't he? Otherwise, why would we want to continue to read that? Yeah. All right, I guess that's it. It's getting hot, so I'm gonna go inside and have a cool drink. Anyway, keep reading some note capes, do some reviews so I can check out what's out there. You're reading something I'm not, besides The Walking Dead, which of course I don't read. But if you do, let me know. Bye.